I'm Amelia Carter, 28, a marketing specialist from Boston who married into the wealthy Reynolds restaurant empire tonight. At my in-laws' anniversary celebration, I'm sitting in the most expensive restaurant I've ever seen, watching my sister-in-law Brianna smirk as the waiter presents a bill for $180,000. Oh, sis-in-law, we forgot our purse and cards, she announces sweetly while I sit there with maxed out credit cards and $17 in my checking account. What happens next leaves me stunned when my normally proper in-laws burst into unexpected laughter. Before I tell you how I ended up in this mess, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe for more family drama stories that might make yours seem normal in comparison. Growing up in rural Massachusetts, my life was comfortable but modest. My father worked as a high school teacher, and my mother ran a small bakery in our town. We never went hungry, but designer clothes and luxury vacations weren't part of my vocabulary. I worked part-time jobs through high school and earned a scholarship to Boston University, where I studied marketing and communications. That's where I met Jake Reynolds during my junior year. Tall, kind-eyed, and genuinely funny, Jake was different from the other business students. While they flaunted their wealth with expensive watches and constant talk about their parents' connections, Jake drove a sensible car and actually seemed interested in learning. We bonded over a group project, and soon we were studying together regularly. It took me 3 months to discover his family-owned Reynolds Restaurant Group, one of the largest upscale dining chains in New England. It's just restaurants, he'd said with a shrug when he finally told me. Nothing special. I later learned just restaurants meant 37 high-end establishments across 6 states, a family compound in Martha's Vineyard, and a private jet they used only for emergencies or really good golf tournaments. As Jake's father would later joke, meeting the Reynolds family was intimidating. Henry Reynolds, Jake's father, had built his empire from a single diner he'd purchased at age 22. Now in his 60s, he maintained the straightforward manner of someone who knew the value of hard work, but his custom suits and the ease with which he ordered 1,000 bottles of wine betrayed his current status. Claire Reynolds, Jake's mother, came from old Boston money. She had the polished grace of someone raised in privilege, but unlike many wealthy women I'd encountered, she seemed genuinely interested in people regardless of their bank accounts. She asked thoughtful questions about my studies and my family's bakery, never making me feel lesser for my background than there was. Brianna, Jake's younger sister by 2 years, while Jake had inherited his father's unpretentious nature, Brianna was her mother's daughter in appearance. Only she had Claire's elegance without her warmth, her refined taste without her kindness. From our first meeting, Brianna assessed me with cool blue eyes that took in my department store dress and non-designer purse, categorizing me immediately as unworthy of her brother. Marketing, how interesting, she'd said during our first dinner together, her tone suggesting it was anything but. I suppose every business needs someone to run their social media. Brianna had graduated from Wharton and worked nominally for the family business, though her role seemed to primarily involve attending charity galas and posting photos from exotic locations on Instagram. She had married Logan Miles 3 years earlier, a man whose family fortune in real estate development matched the Reynolds' restaurant wealth. Logan and Brianna were the perfect power couple, beautiful, rich, and completely dismissive of anyone they deemed beneath them. My first Christmas with the Reynolds had been eye-opening. The gifts exchanged were extravagant designer bags, luxury watches, and weekend getaways presented with casual ease. I had spent weeks making homemade candles and baking specialty cookies for everyone, only to watch Brianna unwrap mine with a tight smile. How crafty, she'd said, setting aside my gift to admire the Cartier bracelet Logan had given her. Despite these tensions, Jake and I built our relationship on genuine connection. He proposed after 2 years of dating with a ring that I later learned had belonged to his grandmother, a detail that made Brianna purse her lips in disapproval when she saw it. You could have at least had it reset in platinum, I overheard her telling Jake at our engagement party. Our wedding was a compromise between my desire for simplicity and the Reynolds' social obligations. While not the society event Brianna had orchestrated for her own wedding, covered in Vogue and featuring a performance by a Grammy-winning artist, our celebration was still far more lavish than anything my family had experienced after the wedding. Jake and I settled into a comfortable brownstone in Boston's South End. While it was a beautiful home in an expensive neighborhood, we had chosen it as a sensible investment rather than purchasing the luxury penthouse Henry had suggested. Jake worked as an executive in the family business, but insisted on earning his position rather than simply inheriting it. I had taken a job at a boutique marketing firm, wanting to establish my own career rather than working for the Reynolds empire. This independence frequently put us at odds with family expectations. Brianna and Logan lived in a sprawling apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, drove matching luxury SUVs, and seemed to approach life as if money were an unlimited resource. Family gatherings often became subtle competitions, with Brianna frequently commenting on our cute little place or asking when Jake would finally take on real responsibility in the company. Through it all, Jake remained my steadfast ally, though sometimes he was oblivious to his sister's digs or his parents' assumptions about our finances. Having grown up with wealth, he didn't always recognize the pressures I felt to maintain appearances within his family. When Henry and Claire announced they would be celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary, I knew immediately it would be an elaborate affair. What I didn't anticipate was how this celebration would ignite every unspoken tension simmering beneath our family dynamic. 6 months before the actual anniversary, Henry and Claire invited us to a family dinner at their Beacon Hill townhouse to discuss the event. Jake and I joined Brianna and Logan for what was labeled a casual meal, though it included lobster bisque, filet mignon, and vintage Bordeaux that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment. 40 years deserves something special, Henry announced as he poured the wine. We've been thinking about Lucille. Lucille wasn't just a restaurant. It was a Boston institution. Perched atop the city's tallest building, it boasted 3 Michelin stars and a months-long waiting list, unless you were someone important, which the Reynolds family certainly were. Known for gold leaf desserts, imported ingredients, and a wine cellar valued at over $10 million, it was anything but modest. Perfect choice, Brianna chimed in without missing a beat. I know the executive chef from last year's charity gala. I'll handle the arrangements. We want to keep it intimate, Claire added. Just family and our closest friends, 40 people for 40 years. Brianna was already scrolling through her phone. I'll start a planning committee. Amelia, you can help with invitations or something. Jake squeezed my hand beneath the table. Amelia's the marketing expert. She could handle all the communication and coordination. Brianna's smile tightened. Of course. But I've already worked with most of these vendors for my events. It makes more sense for me to take the lead. We'll all contribute, Henry declared. And, naturally, we'll split the cost equally among the children. Your mother and I just want to enjoy ourselves without worrying about the details. My stomach dropped. On the surface, splitting costs equally sounded fair, but considering Brianna and Logan's income was at least 5 times ours, equal felt anything but equitable. Later that night, as Jake and I got ready for bed, I brought it up gently. About your parents' anniversary dinner. What do you think our share might come to? Jake shrugged as he hung up his suit. Probably a few thousand per couple. Why? A few thousand is a lot for us right now, I reminded him. We just paid for the bathroom repairs, and our mortgage went up after the interest adjustment. Jake sat beside me on the bed. I know things are tight, with my promotion still pending and your firm's slow quarter, but this means a lot to my parents. I understand that. I just wish the contributions were proportional instead of split evenly. Brianna and Logan can blow a few grand on a single weekend without blinking. If it's really a problem, I can talk to Dad, he offered, though I could already hear the hesitation in his voice. No, I sighed. That would just give Brianna more ammunition. We'll figure it out. The next day, I did some research on Lucille, hoping to get a sense of the budget. The restaurant didn't list prices, a bad sign for budget-conscious diners, but reviews mentioned tasting menus starting at $400 per person. And that was before drinks, tax, or gratuity. For 40 guests, we were easily looking at $16,000 minimum, likely double that with wine pairings and private service. Our share of this equal contribution could surpass our mortgage payment. I immediately began cutting back, bringing lunch to work, canceling my barely used gym membership, and picking up freelance marketing projects on the weekends. Jake cut down on golf outings and business lunches, though he didn't seem quite as stressed about the finances as I was. Brianna, meanwhile, had turned the entire event into a full-time production. She created a dedicated email account for updates and began sending daily bulletins about decor themes, menu options, and seating arrangements. She also organized a slew of pre-celebration events, shopping trips, spa days, brunches, all labeled optional but clearly expected as family bonding. 3 weeks before the dinner, I finally worked up the courage to talk to Brianna directly. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon, catching her between her Pilates session and lunch with friends. "Brianna, I wanted to talk to you about the anniversary budget," I began cautiously. "What about it?" Her tone was already dismissive. "Jake and I are on a tighter budget than you might think. We're a little worried about keeping up with the expenses." The silence on the other end lingered just long enough to feel intentional. "Amelia, this is my parents' 40th anniversary. If you and Jake can't afford to participate properly, maybe you should reconsider your priorities. Everyone else seems to be managing just fine." "I'm not saying we won't contribute," I clarified. "I'm just wondering if we can find a way to adjust expectations a bit, or explore a few less extravagant options." "The plans are already set," she replied coldly. "If you're having financial difficulties, that's really between you and Jake. Don't try to water down my parents' celebration just because you married into this family without understanding what it requires." She hung up before I could reply, leaving me reeling with a mix of anger and humiliation. Later that evening, she sent out a group email announcing the final menu selection, which now included a champagne toast with vintage Dom Perignon. The day before the big dinner, Brianna organized what she called a ladies' preparation day for Claire, herself, me, and the wives of Henry's 2 brothers. The itinerary included salon appointments, a luxury lunch, and a shopping spree on Newberry Street. I arrived at the salon 15 minutes early, hoping to catch Claire privately before the others showed up. The receptionist ushered me to a lounge area stocked with cucumber water and imported Italian cookies, informing me that Mrs. Reynolds had called ahead. They'd all be running about 20 minutes late. When they finally arrived, Brianna led the way in designer activewear that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. "Sorry we're late," she announced breezily, with no trace of actual apology. "Mom and I were finalizing some surprise details for tomorrow." Claire greeted me warmly, pulling me into a hug. "Amelia, darling, you look tired. Is everything all right?" Before I could answer, Brianna jumped in. "She's fine, Mom. Everyone's getting the works today: hair, nails, facials, makeup trials for tomorrow. My treat." To outsiders, it may have seemed generous, but I knew better. This was Brianna's way of making sure we all looked appropriate for the celebration, according to her standards. Still, I thanked her politely, aware that Claire was watching us closely. The salon experience, admittedly, was luxurious. As the stylist worked on my hair, Brianna floated between stations, showing everyone photos on her phone. "We've arranged a custom menu with wine pairings for each course," she announced. "And wait until you see the flowers. We're having them flown in from Holland. The entire room will be transformed." After the salon, we headed to Maison Blanc, a high-end French bistro where a basic salad cost $30. We were seated at a prime table, and Brianna ordered champagne for everyone without even glancing at the price. When lunch ended and the server brought the bill, Brianna rummaged through her handbag with exaggerated confusion. "Oh no," she gasped dramatically. "I must have forgotten my wallet in the rush this morning. Amelia, would you mind covering me? I'll pay you back tomorrow." The bill was over $400. I smiled tightly and handed over my credit card, knowing it meant I'd have to cancel the grocery delivery I had scheduled for that evening. "You're such a lifesaver," Brianna said sweetly as the server walked off with my card. "Oh, and I made a dinner reservation for tonight, too. The guys are golfing, so I thought us ladies could continue the fun." Claire must have noticed my expression, because she quickly interjected, "Actually, I'm feeling a bit tired." Perhaps we should save our energy for tomorrow's celebration. Brianna looked disappointed but nodded.
Fine.
But we still need to find something for Amelia to wear. That dress you wore to the Christmas party just won't work for Lucille. We proceeded to an upscale boutique where the staff greeted Brianna by name. As they brought out one designer dress after another, Brianna dismissed everything I liked. Too casual.
Too bright.
Too last season. Finally, she held up a black dress with a modest neckline and a $995 price tag. This one. It's perfect. Understated and elegant. I looked at the tag and hesitated. It's beautiful, but I don't think. You need something appropriate for the venue, Brianna insisted. Think of it as an investment piece. Claire, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. Brianna, dear, perhaps Amelia already has something suitable. Not everyone needs a new outfit for every occasion. Brianna's smile didn't reach her eyes. Mom, we're celebrating your anniversary at Boston's most exclusive restaurant. I'm just trying to make sure everyone looks the part. In the end, I bought a dress from the sale rack. Still more expensive than what I'd normally spend, but not completely budget-ruining. Brianna made her disapproval known with a dismissive glance and a muttered comment to the sales associate about bargain hunters. As we left the boutique, I checked my phone. Jake had sent several messages. His golf outing had turned into drinks at the club. He wouldn't be home until late. Walking toward the parking garage, I overheard Brianna talking to Claire a few steps ahead of me. I just don't understand why Jake doesn't help her more financially, Brianna said. It's embarrassing watching her count pennies for a simple lunch. Brianna, Claire replied softly, not everyone measures success by their bank account. Jake and Amelia have different priorities. But they're family, Brianna insisted. She should at least try to fit in better. That sale dress is going to look so out of place tomorrow. Claire sighed, but said nothing. Her silence felt like quiet agreement. My cheeks burned as I pretended not to hear them. By the time I got home that evening, I was emotionally drained and increasingly anxious about the next day. Jake arrived shortly before midnight, slightly tipsy from the day with the guys and completely oblivious to my stress. Did you have fun with the ladies? He asked, climbing into bed. Brianna orchestrated the entire day to remind me I don't belong in your family, I replied, too tired to soften the truth. Jake sighed. Amelia, you're exaggerating. Brianna is just Brianna. She means well. She made me pay for everyone's lunch because she forgot her wallet, I snapped. Then spent the afternoon trying to pressure me into buying a $1,000 dress. I'm sorry, Jake said, pulling me into his arms. Tomorrow will be better. It's just one dinner, and then it's over. If only I'd known how wrong he was. The evening of the anniversary arrived, bringing with it crisp early autumn air and a golden sunset. Jake and I took an Uber to Lucille. Parking in that area would have cost at least $60, and I wasn't about to add one more unnecessary expense. The restaurant took up the entire top floor of a gleaming glass skyscraper. As we stepped out of the elevator, we were greeted by a host in a sleek black suit. Welcome to Lucille. Are you here for the Reynolds celebration? Jake nodded, and we were escorted through the main dining room, already buzzing with Boston's elite enjoying artfully plated courses and vintage wines. We were led to a private space in the back. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft, golden light over tables adorned with white orchids, gold-rimmed china, and crystal stemware. Even the air felt different, cool, refined, and scented faintly with white truffle. The scent of saffron drifted in from the open kitchen as we stepped into the private dining room, transformed exactly as Brianna had promised. Thousands of white roses and lilies gave the illusion of dining in the clouds, echoing the restaurant's sky theme. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking sunset over Boston, while a string quartet played softly in the corner, adding to the dreamlike atmosphere. Most of the guests had already arrived. Henry and Claire stood near the center of the room, he in a classic black tuxedo, she in a graceful sapphire gown that complemented her silver hair. They greeted us warmly. Claire held my hand a moment longer than expected. You look lovely, dear, she said, her gaze approving my carefully chosen, budget-conscious dress. Thank you both for being here to celebrate with us. Moments later, Brianna and Logan made their entrance, commanding attention the moment they walked in. Brianna wore a couture gown that likely cost more than my car, sparkling with diamonds that glinted under the chandeliers. Logan, polished and handsome in a way that felt curated, scanned the room with the ease of someone who had never needed to glance at a price tag. The seating arrangement, clearly Brianna's doing, placed Jake and me directly across from her and Logan, with Henry and Claire at either end of the long table. The rest of the guest list included Henry's brothers and their wives, a few longtime family friends, and 2 investor couples tied to the restaurant group. Once everyone had taken their seats, the waitstaff arrived with trays of champagne. Not just any champagne, of course. The sommelier, speaking in reverent tones, explained that it was a rare vintage chosen specifically for the occasion. I would later learn that each bottle cost over $5,000. A toast, Henry declared, rising to his feet with glass raised. To 40 years with the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Claire, you've made every day an adventure worth living. Claire's eyes shimmered with emotion as she lifted her glass in response. And to the family we've built together. Our greatest achievement. The room echoed with gentle clinks of crystal as everyone sipped the exquisite champagne. Soon after, the first course was presented, a delicate arrangement of Ostra caviar with gold leaf and creme fraiche. The sommelier returned, this time pouring crisp white wine to accompany the caviar. We'll be enjoying a different wine with each course, Brianna announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. The sommelier has selected some truly exceptional vintages from Lucille's private cellar. I watched as Logan casually swirled his wine and took a sip. Excellent choice. Isn't this the same producer we discovered in Burgundy last summer? The sommelier nodded with appreciation, clearly impressed with Logan's knowledge. Meanwhile, I was still trying to remember if the caviar called for the small fork or the even smaller spoon. Jake, sensing my hesitation, subtly demonstrated with his own utensils, so I could follow his lead. Brianna leaned across the table. Amelia, you've hardly touched your caviar. Not to your taste. It was a question designed to highlight my inexperience, but I offered a warm smile, just savoring it slowly. It's not every day we enjoy something so special. Oh, of course, she replied sweetly. I forget not everyone is used to fine dining. Claire, overhearing the exchange, deftly changed the subject. Brianna, why don't you tell everyone about the anniversary trip you and Logan took to Bali last year? The meal continued, each course more elaborate than the last. Butter-poached lobster with black truffle, A5 Wagyu beef with foie gras, wild mushrooms sourced from a remote Japanese forest. With each dish came a new wine pairing, and with each pour, I grew more aware of the mounting cost of the meal. At one point, I quietly asked for water instead of the next wine, hoping to avoid drawing attention. Brianna didn't let that pass. Not drinking the Bordeaux? She asked, eyebrows raised. It's over $2,000 a bottle. Dad had it imported just for tonight. I'm just taking a little break, I replied calmly. Everything is so delicious. I want to remember each bite. Brianna offered a thin smile. How sensible of you. As the evening progressed, Henry continued regaling the table with stories from his early days, building the Reynolds empire. I usually enjoyed those tales. They reminded me of the hard-working man behind the luxury, but tonight they only underscored the chasm between their world and mine. After the main course dishes were cleared, Brianna briefly excused herself. She returned moments later carrying a small, elegantly wrapped gift, which she presented to her parents with dramatic flair. A little something to celebrate 40 incredible years, she announced. Claire opened the package to reveal 2 first-class tickets for a month-long world cruise, along with a beautifully crafted photo album documenting preparations for a surprise vow renewal ceremony to be held on board. We've arranged everything, Brianna explained. All your closest friends will be flying out to join you for the ceremony in Santorini. Claire and Henry were stunned, overjoyed. The extravagance of it all made my stomach tighten. Jake and I had prepared a gift of our own, a custom-made album filled with restored photographs from their decades together. It was heartfelt, meaningful, and now embarrassingly modest. When it was our turn, Jake stood and spoke warmly about the process of collecting and restoring the old photos. Claire teared up flipping through the pages, clearly touched. But across the table, I saw Brianna lean toward Logan and whisper just loud enough for me to hear. So creative when you're on a budget. For hours into the celebration, we had completed 7 elaborate courses, each with its own wine. The room was filled with laughter and mingling now, the formality easing slightly as people rose from their seats to chat and enjoy the music. I excused myself to the restroom, needing just a few quiet minutes away from all the gold leaf, truffle oil, and pointed glances. Despite Brianna's pointed remarks, the restroom at Lucille offered a brief moment of peace. The space was all marble, soft lighting, and elegant calm, complete with a uniformed attendant offering plush hand towels and high-end toiletries. As I washed my hands, the door opened. Brianna entered, her arrival so precisely timed, I suspected she'd followed me on purpose. "Having a good time?" she asked, casually reapplying her lipstick in the mirror. "It's a beautiful celebration," I replied diplomatically. "Your parents seem very happy." Brianna turned toward me, her tone shifting. "I actually wanted to speak with you privately. Logan and I think it would be meaningful if the children, covered the entire cost of tonight's event as our gift to Mom and Dad." My heart skipped a beat. The entire bill? For 40 people? "It's the least we can do," Brianna continued smoothly. "They've given us so much. We thought it made sense to split the cost evenly, just between the two couples." "Brianna," I began, trying to keep my voice calm. "I don't think you understand our financial situation. We're still paying off student loans and—" "It's one night, Amelia," she cut in, her tone sharpening. "One special night for my parents. Surely you can manage to contribute without bringing up your limitations." She glanced once more at her reflection. "I've already discussed it with the others. Everyone agrees. It's the perfect surprise." Before I could say another word, she swept out of the restroom, leaving me frozen, hands gripping the edge of the marble countertop. My chest tightened. I pulled out my phone and typed furiously. "Me to Jake. Emergency. Brianna plans for us to split the whole bill. We can't afford this." "Jake." "What? That wasn't the plan. How much are we talking?" "Me. No idea. But it must be thousands per couple. Multiple courses. Rare wines. 40 guests." "Jake." "Don't worry. We'll talk to her." But when I returned to the dining room, Jake was deep in conversation with one of his father's business partners, and Brianna was nowhere to be found. I sat through the next course in quiet dread, barely touching the delicate chocolate dessert adorned with edible gold. My stomach churned. As coffee and digestives were being poured, Brianna reappeared and gently tapped her glass. "Before this wonderful evening concludes," she announced, smiling at her parents, "the children have one final surprise." Henry looked up, pleased and unsuspecting. "As a token of our appreciation for everything you've done," she continued, "we'd like to cover tonight's celebration. All of it." Henry opened his mouth to protest, but Brianna raised her hand graciously. "We insist. It's the least we can do to thank you for 40 years of love and guidance." Claire looked touched. Henry seemed surprised, but clearly moved. Beside me, I felt Jake go stiff. He realized what was happening, but before he could speak, the maitre d' appeared at Brianna's side with a sleek leather folder. "As requested, madam," he murmured. Brianna took the folder with a smile and handed it to Logan. He opened it, and for the briefest second, his eyebrows shot up, the only sign of the astronomical total inside. Then he passed it around the table. When the folder reached Jake, he flipped it open and instantly paled. He leaned toward me and showed me the number. $180,000. I nearly choked. $180,000. More than twice our annual mortgage payments. More than I had earned in my first 2 years out of college. Even split between the two couples, our share would be $90,000. Whispers of admiration rose around the room as guests commented on the children's generosity. I sat frozen, unable to speak. Then Brianna appeared at our side. "Isn't this wonderful?" she said brightly. "Now, shall we settle up between couples before we present the gift to Mom and Dad?" Jake stood abruptly, clearly ready to pull her aside. But before he could say a word, she was already extracting her black Amex from her purse. Logan followed suit, both of them turning to us expectantly. And then Brianna delivered the line that changed everything. "Oh, sis-in-law," she said, her voice syrupy and loud enough for several guests to hear. "We forgot our purse and cards." Logan played along immediately. "That's right. We left everything at home. Such a shame. On tonight of all nights." The maitre d' hesitated nearby, the room's mood suddenly brittle. Several guests turned to look. Jake's face flushed with a mix of anger and humiliation. "Brianna," he began, his voice low and strained. "This isn't the time." "Is there a problem?" Henry called from the head of the table, the warmth in his voice cooling as he sensed the tension. I looked from Brianna's smug expression to the folder, then to the manager standing awkwardly behind her. And something inside me broke. Months of anxiety. Years of trying to fit in. The subtle jabs. The performative generosity. The quiet humiliation. I stood, my voice calm and clear. "Yes. There's a problem." The room fell into silence. Brianna arranged for Jake and me to pay half of tonight's $180,000 bill, knowing we cannot possibly afford it. Claire gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Henry's expression darkened. "It was meant to be a surprise gift from all of us," Brianna said quickly, her tone suddenly saccharine. "We had no idea Amelia and Jake were struggling financially." "We're not struggling," Jake said, standing beside me, his voice firm. "We're living within our means. We're making responsible choices. What we can't do is drop $90,000 on one dinner just to keep up appearances." A heavy, stunned silence settled over the room. I felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. This was exactly what Brianna had engineered. Public embarrassment. A reminder that we didn't belong. That we weren't enough. But then, something unexpected happened. Henry Reynolds, the stoic patriarch of the Reynolds restaurant group, started to laugh. It began as a quiet chuckle, then grew into deep, rolling laughter that filled the lavish private dining room. Claire joined in moments later, her composure dissolving into light, genuine mirth. Across the table, Brianna's perfectly composed face faltered. "Dad? Mom? What's so funny?" Henry Reynolds's laughter slowly faded as he wiped tears from his eyes. The room had fallen into an uneasy silence, every guest's attention fixed on him as he rose from his seat at the head of the table. "Brianna, my dear," he said, his voice kind but resolute, "did you truly believe I would let my children pay for this evening?" Brianna's confident smile faltered. "It was meant to be our gift to you and Mom." "A gift," Claire interjected, her earlier amusement replaced with quiet seriousness, "that you apparently didn't discuss with your brother and sister-in-law." Henry turned to address the room. "I must apologize for this unexpected drama. The bill for tonight was arranged and paid weeks ago. There was never any intention for our children to cover the costs." Relief washed over me so forcefully that I had to grip the edge of the table just to stay steady. Jake gently reached over and squeezed my hand. Across the table, Brianna's polished composure cracked, a flush creeping up her neck. "But we wanted to surprise you," she protested weakly. "The only surprise," Claire said, her voice cool but composed, "is that you would deliberately put your brother and Amelia in such a publicly uncomfortable position." Sensing the tension, the restaurant manager discreetly approached. "Mr. Reynolds," he said, "as you mentioned, everything has been handled. Please don't worry about the bill." "Thank you, John Mark," Henry replied warmly, shaking the man's hand. "The evening has been perfect, as always." As the manager retreated, Henry turned back to Brianna and Logan. "We'll continue this discussion in private. But I want to be clear, this celebration was our gift to you all, not the other way around." Claire stood beside her husband, poised and elegant. What disappoints me most is that this entire situation was avoidable. Brianna, we've talked about this before. In that moment, it hit me, Claire had known. The quiet conversation I'd overheard the day before, the way she'd held my hand a bit too long when she greeted me tonight. She had seen this coming. What behavior? Brianna asked, her voice losing its edge. Using money as a weapon, Henry said bluntly. Your mother and I have watched you do it for years. You use your financial privilege to make others feel small. That ends tonight. Around us, several guests began quietly gathering their belongings, sensing that this was now a private family moment. Henry noticed and shifted smoothly back into host mode. Please, everyone, enjoy your desserts and cognac. 40 years of marriage teaches you that sometimes family discussions arrive at inconvenient moments. His charm helped ease the tension slightly, and subdued conversation began again at the table. Brianna, still standing, looked stricken, her usual armor of control slipping. I was only trying to do something special, she muttered, though her voice trembled now with uncertainty. By humiliating your brother and his wife. Claire asked softly. That was the plan? Of course not. Logan cut in smoothly. This is clearly a misunderstanding. Henry met his son-in-law's gaze, steady and unblinking. Logan, I've known you for 7 years. In all that time, I've never once seen you challenge Brianna's behavior, only enable it. For the first time since I'd known him, Logan looked genuinely uncomfortable. Jake, calm until now, finally spoke up. Brianna, if you had concerns about our ability to contribute, you should have come to us. Privately. That would have required actual empathy, I said, the words escaping before I could stop myself. Claire, to my surprise, rested a hand gently on my shoulder. Amelia's right. Empathy has never been your strong suit, Brianna. But it's not too late to learn. The string quartet, silent during the confrontation, quietly resumed playing, providing a soft, awkward soundtrack to the moment. Brianna finally sank back into her seat, posture no longer perfect. I didn't mean to cause a scene, she said in a small voice, though whether it was remorse or damage control wasn't clear. Henry returned to his seat, then leaned forward, addressing all of us. When I started in this business, I had nothing, he said. Did you know that, Brianna? Your mother came from wealth. But me? I had $17 to my name when I asked her to marry me. I'd heard this story before, but Brianna looked startled. Your mom didn't care about my bank account, Henry continued. She saw something in me beyond the numbers. And that is the foundation we built this family on. Not money, not status, but character and connection. Claire nodded. I've watched you judge Amelia from the moment Jake brought her home. You've measured her worth by her clothes, her background, her career, everything but who she truly is. That's not fair, Brianna whispered. What's not fair, Jake said, his voice calm but unwavering, is creating situations that make Amelia feel like she doesn't belong in this family. That stops now. I sat in silence, stunned, as years of unspoken tension spilled out into the open. The Reynolds family, so polished, so intimidating, was now having the most honest, raw moment I'd ever witnessed. In public, Henry raised a hand and signaled for a server, who brought him a fresh glass of scotch. He took a slow, thoughtful sip, then spoke again, his voice lower now. Tomorrow morning, I want all of you to come to the house for brunch. There's more to say, but this isn't the place. He glanced around the room at the guests, many of whom were now clearly pretending not to listen. Tonight, he said, lifting his glass toward Claire, is still a celebration of 40 incredible years with the love of my life. Claire smiled at him, her expression warm and genuine. The toast served as a gentle cue to return to the evening's original purpose. Slowly, the atmosphere began to settle. Brianna, however, remained silent for the rest of the night, her usual confidence noticeably absent. Logan tried to strike up conversations with various guests, but his usual polished charm came off strained. Jake, meanwhile, kept his fingers tightly laced with mine, a silent but unmistakable gesture of support. As the evening wound down, Guests offered warm congratulations to Henry and Claire before making their way out. When it was our turn to say goodnight, Claire pulled me into a heartfelt embrace. "We've always seen your worth, Amelia," she whispered softly, even when others refused to. Henry hugged me next. "Thank you for loving my son for who he is, not for what he has," he said, his voice loud enough for Brianna to hear. The elevator ride down from Lucille was cloaked in awkward silence. Jake, Brianna, Logan, and I stood shoulder to shoulder, yet miles apart emotionally. As the doors opened to the lobby, Brianna finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry about tonight," she said, her voice hesitant, eyes avoiding mine. "It wasn't supposed to go like that." "How was it supposed to go, Brianna?" Jake asked, his arm tightening around my waist. She had no response. The Uber ride home was quiet, each of us deep in thought, processing the night's events. The city lights streaked past the windows as I rested my head on Jake's shoulder, emotionally drained yet somehow lighter than I'd felt in years. "I still can't believe your dad had already paid the bill," I said at last, breaking the silence. Jake exhaled. "I can't believe Brianna tried to pull that stunt. Actually, no, I can believe it. I just didn't think she'd be that brazen." "Your mom knew," I told him. "She's been watching the way Brianna treats me this whole time." "She notices everything," Jake agreed. "She's just more subtle than Dad when it comes to dealing with it." He squeezed my hand gently. "I'm sorry I didn't recognize it sooner. I should have said something earlier. Should have stood up for you more." "We both should have," I admitted. "Instead of keeping the peace, we should have just been honest." When we got home, the contrast between our modest but cozy brownstone and Lucille's luxury hit me in a new way. Our home might not appear in design magazines like Brianna and Logan's, but it was ours. Warm, personal, and most importantly, sustainable. Jake opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion, and we stayed up late talking, more openly than we had in months, about family, finances, and the values we wanted to uphold. "I love my family," Jake said, "but tonight made me realize how much I've absorbed their expectations without even questioning them." "Your parents surprised me," I replied. "Your mom especially. They see more than I thought." By morning, as we got ready for brunch at Henry and Claire's, a mix of apprehension and cautious hope hung between us. The confrontation may have cleared the air, but family wounds, especially those tied to money and pride, rarely disappear overnight. Henry and Claire's stately Beacon Hill townhouse, passed down through Claire's family, stood as a quiet monument to old Boston wealth. As Jake and I climbed the steps to the front door, I spotted Brianna and Logan's car already parked outside. Claire greeted us at the door with warmth, ushering us into the formal dining room where coffee, fresh fruit, and an array of pastries were artfully laid out. Brianna and Logan were already seated, noticeably subdued. Henry stood at the head of the table, reading glasses perched low as he glanced up from the Sunday paper. "Good morning, Amelia." "Jake," he said with a smile, folding the paper. "Help yourselves." Sophia made her cinnamon rolls. We began with small talk, weather, food, fond memories of the celebration. But once everyone had filled their plates, Henry cleared his throat and shifted the tone. "I want to speak about last night," he began. "Your mother and I have given it a lot of thought." Brianna sat up straighter, eyes cautious. "I've already apologized, Dad." "To whom?" Claire asked gently. "Because I don't believe Amelia or Jake heard one." Brianna glanced at us, then looked down. "I'm sorry I put you both in such an awkward position. That wasn't my intention." "Wasn't it?" Henry asked, his tone firm but not unkind. "We've seen these patterns for years, Brianna. The forgotten wallet when you're with Amelia, the remarks about their home, the pressure to spend beyond their means." Logan shifted uncomfortably. "Henry, I think—" "Logan," Claire interrupted smoothly, "this might be a better time to listen rather than defend." A flush crept up Brianna's neck. "You make it sound like I've been deliberately cruel. I've only ever tried to include Amelia in family things." "On your terms," Jake said, "without once asking what worked for us or even what we wanted. What's the point of having money if you're afraid to spend it?" Brianna shot back. "You work for the family business, Jake. You could be making triple your salary if you stepped up. And that, Henry said, leaning forward, is the exact mindset that concerns us. You measure everything and everyone by money. That was never the foundation of this family. Claire reached for Henry's hand. After you were born, we made a choice to give you every advantage. Maybe we went too far. Too far. Brianna echoed, looking bewildered. We never taught you, Henry said softly, how to earn something for yourself, or that a person's worth isn't measured in dollar signs. I had been quiet throughout, feeling like an outsider to a long overdue reckoning, until Claire turned to me. Amelia, she said gently, would you walk with me in the garden? I think the children need some space to talk things through. The Reynolds' garden was a peaceful corner of the city, winding stone paths, fragrant herbs, and perfectly manicured flower beds. As we strolled beneath the soft morning sun, Claire looped her arm through mine. There's something I need to tell you about myself, she began, her voice calm and deliberate. Something not many people know. She began softly. My family name may carry the weight of old Boston wealth, but by the time I was born, the fortune had dwindled to almost nothing. What remained was the townhouse and a few pieces of heirloom jewelry. I blinked in surprise. I never would have guessed. Most people don't, she replied with a knowing smile. My parents were masters at maintaining appearances. They'd host grand dinners in the formal dining room, then retreat to the kitchen afterward for simple meals. I grew up watching them quietly struggle to keep pace with friends who had real money. That must have been hard, I said, beginning to understand her in a new light. When I met Henry, he was a line cook working nights and attending business classes. My parents were appalled. They'd hoped I'd marry someone who could revive our lost fortune. But Henry had something far more valuable, vision and integrity. She paused beside a blooming rosebush and gently touched one of the blossoms. I see those same qualities in you, Amelia. You love Jake for who he is, not for the Reynolds name, and certainly not for the future inheritance. That kind of love? Brianna's never truly understood it. I've tried so hard to fit into your family, I admitted quietly. Claire gave me a kind look. Perhaps too hard. We never wanted you to change to belong. When we returned to the dining room, a noticeable shift had occurred. Brianna's posture had softened, and there were faint traces of tears on her cheeks. Henry was speaking in a calm, measured tone, the same one I'd once heard him use with young chefs in his kitchens. Starting tomorrow, he said as we sat, Brianna will be taking a more active role in our community outreach, specifically with our scholarship recipients and the Worker Assistance Fund. Brianna nodded, her confidence tempered. Dad thinks it might give me some perspective. And Logan, Henry continued, will join our employee financial planning committee, helping staff understand budgeting, saving, and investing for their futures. Claire gave my hand a discreet but encouraging squeeze. Jake arched his eyebrows at the announcement. Henry turned to us. And as for you two, I want to be perfectly clear. The choices you've made, living within your means, building your careers carefully, valuing experiences over extravagance, those aren't shortcomings. Those are principles. And one's Claire and I respect deeply. Claire chimed in gently. Your father started this business with a single diner. He could have borrowed from my family to expand quickly, but he refused. He built slowly, based on real success. The entire Reynolds Group, Henry added, was created one responsible step at a time, not through flash or excess. As brunch wrapped up, Brianna approached me while Jake and his father talked near the fireplace. I owe you a real apology, she said quietly. Not just for last night, but for a lot of things over the years. Brianna, I began, but she held up a hand. Please let me finish. I've never had to earn anything, not like you and Jake. Everything's been handed to me. And I've judged you for not having that, when really I've never earned it myself. Her honesty caught me off guard. We all have different journeys, she continued. And mine needs to change. I don't expect us to suddenly be best friends, but I'd like the chance to start fresh. To know you not as someone to compete with, but as my brother's wife. It wasn't a magical transformation. Years of old habits don't vanish overnight. But it was a beginning. In the weeks that followed, I noticed subtle but meaningful changes within the Reynolds family dynamic. Brianna, though hesitant at first, began engaging more seriously in her community work. Occasionally, she'd text me to ask questions about marketing strategies for the scholarship fund. Our conversations, still a little awkward, became more real. A month after the anniversary, Jake and I hosted a simple dinner at our place. We cooked together in our small kitchen, serving a homemade meal at the old dining table that had belonged to my grandmother, scratched and water-stained from years of family use. To my surprise, everyone came, including Brianna and Logan. No one commented on our humble home. No suggestions for renovations. No passive-aggressive jabs. As we sat around the table, Henry raised his glass. To homes filled with love, not things, and to family ties that are richer than any bank account. Claire smiled at me from across the table, a look filled with affection and something else, respect. And it meant more to me than anything money could buy. Ironically, the $180,000 dinner bill that had once sent me spiraling had become the turning point. It didn't break us. It bonded us. Not as poor relatives clawing to keep up, but as a meaningful part of a family with a new understanding of what truly matters. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Jake and I were cleaning up, he took my hand and spun me gently across our little kitchen. "You know what I realized tonight?" he asked, his forehead resting against mine. "What's that?" "We're the richest people I know. And we were, in every way that truly counts.